Chapter 1. Lady Vandeleur's Hat Box. Harry Hartley was a kind, shy young man. Until his 16th birthday, he received the education most English gentlemen get. Harry did not like studying very much, so he was allowed to finish his education before most young men do. However, Harry loved music, and he could sing and play the piano well. These talents, and a bit of luck, helped Harry to find a job when his parents died just 2 years after he finished school. That was how Harry Hartley began a new life as private secretary to Major General Sir Thomas Vandeleur. When he was young, Sir Thomas Vandeleur was a soldier in India. He was poor when he left England, but he made a good career for himself working for the Rajah of Kashgar. When Sir Thomas returned to England, he had with him one of the largest diamonds in the world. This was known as the Rajah's diamond. The Rajah of Kashgar gave this wonderful diamond to Sir Thomas to thank him for something he did for the Rajah. Nobody knew exactly what Sir Thomas did to get the famous diamond, but the diamond made him one of the richest and most important men in England. In his new life, he was always invited to exclusive parties. Soon he was married to one of the richest and most beautiful women in England. But for Harry, life was not so pleasant in the Vandeleur household. Sir Thomas was a very difficult man to live with, and Harry did not really like working for him. Sir Thomas was often angry and shouted at Harry. But Sir Thomas's wife, Lady Vandeleur, liked Harry very much and treated him like a son. Harry liked Lady Vandeleur too, and he was happy to do different jobs for her. Most days she gave Harry some money and sent him to different expensive shops to buy her hats or other things she wanted. Early one morning, Harry was in the living room, and he could hear the conversation Lady Vandeleur was having with her brother Charlie Pendragon. Charlie was a lazy young man. "It must happen today, or never," said Lady Vandeleur to her brother. "Oh, Clara," he replied, "I know it must happen today, but it is such a bad thing to do." "Don't be silly, Charlie," said Lady Vandeleur. "Remember what I always say, the family before all, and Clara before the family." "Yes, dear sister, you're so clever," said Charlie. "I must go now. I don't want him to find me here." Charlie left quickly by the back stairs. "Harry," said Lady Vandeleur, turning to look at him, "I have an important errand for you this morning. It's a secret and no one must know about it. Sir Thomas may get very upset." Lady Vandeleur continued, "I want you to take my hat box to an address on the other side of London and give it to a man I know there. Please remember to get a receipt for it. Do you understand?" Harry started repeating her instructions, but just then Sir Thomas came into the room, his face red with anger. "Look at this bill, madam," he cried. "I know you married me for my money, but I don't want you to spend all of it." "Mr. Hartley," said Lady Vandeleur, "please go on your errand." "Wait," said Sir Thomas, looking at Harry. Then he turned to Lady Vandeleur and said, "What is this errand? I don't trust him or you. After all, what does he do to earn his money? It's a mystery to everyone." "I thought you had something to tell me privately," said Lady Vandeleur. "Don't try to change the subject," insisted Sir Thomas. "You spoke about an errand." "I don't want our servants to listen to our arguments. Mr. Hartley, you may go." Harry quickly left the room, and as he ran upstairs to get the hat box, he could hear Sir Thomas's loud, angry voice and Lady Vandeleur's cold replies. Harry often went on these secret errands for Lady Vandeleur. He knew Lady Vandeleur's spending was a problem, and he often went around London paying small amounts of money to different people for her. But Harry was always loyal to his lady. Besides, he disliked Sir Thomas, and he understood Lady Vandeleur's love for expensive things. It was a hot day, and Harry decided to walk through Kensington Gardens to stay in the open. Harry walked near the magnificent Kensington Palace and was almost through the gardens when Sir Thomas suddenly appeared in front of him. "Where are you going?" demanded Sir Thomas. "I'm just taking a little walk in the park on this lovely day," replied Harry, lying to his employer. "With that thing," said Sir Thomas, pointing at Lady Vandeleur's hat box. "You're lying, and you know it. Where did my wife tell you to go?" cried Sir Thomas. Sir Thomas started to raise his walking stick to hit Harry, but suddenly Charlie Pendragon appeared. "Sir Thomas, you can't treat Mr. Hartley like this." "No one can tell me what to do," said Sir Thomas, raising his walking stick and trying to hit Charlie. A moment later, they were fighting and a crowd of people was looking at them. "Run, Harry! Run!" cried Charlie as he continued fighting. Harry ran away as fast as he could, thinking all the time, why was Sir Thomas so curious about what was in the hat box? What doesn't Lady Vandeleur want her husband to know? Is she doing something dishonest? Why were they arguing? But Harry stopped thinking when he suddenly realized that he was lost. He was now in a very narrow street. It had high garden walls on both sides. Everything was still and silent. As Harry hurried along the street, he wondered where he was. This part of London was completely new to him. While he was wondering where he was, someone shouted his name. He turned around and saw Charlie Pendragon coming quickly after him. He looked angry. Harry knew that Charlie helped him earlier, but by now Harry was so frightened that he ran. He knew that he had to hide. He ran around a corner, climbed over a garden wall, and fell over into a garden with a soft thump. Harry was not hurt, but he lay on the soft, wet ground for a few seconds and thought, "What am I going to do now?" But he had no time to think anymore. A large man was looking down at him. He picked Harry up easily and stood in front of him. "Who are you?" demanded the man angrily. "And why did you come into my garden in this way?" Harry was too frightened to speak. So the man went on, "Speak up, young man, or I'll take you to the nearest police station. Just look what you have done to my flowers." But as the man looked at the ground, his eyes opened wide and he said, "What's all this?" Harry looked where the man was looking. The hat box was open and, all over the ground around them, between their feet and under the roses, were diamonds. There were diamond rings, diamond earrings, a magnificent tiara made of diamonds, and dozens of diamonds shining in the sun. Chapter 2. A surprise in the garden. Harry could not think of anything to say. All he could do was look at the diamonds. The man was silent for a long time, too, before he finally spoke. "Now I understand. You stole these and ran away. But don't worry. I see there are enough for two here." He went down on his knees and started to quickly pick up the diamonds and put them back in the hat box. "Let's go inside where no one can see us," said the man, getting up. The two men walked across the garden. Harry was so afraid he still could not speak. He understood that he was in big trouble. The idea that Lady Vandeleur was doing something dishonest made Harry sad. He thought, "Now I understand why Sir Thomas shouted at his wife before I left the house. She's spending too much money. She probably wanted to sell her diamonds to pay her bills." Just as Harry and the man were about to go into the man's house, a young man came into the garden. By the way he was dressed, Harry could see he was either a priest or studying to become a priest. The older man touched Harry's arm and whispered, "Don't say a word." Then he said, "Hello, Mr. Rolls. This is a young friend of mine who came to see my beautiful roses." "How do you do?" "Oh, but haven't we met before?" asked Mr. Rolls. "Aren't you Mr. Hartley?" The man did not give Harry time to answer. He quickly pushed Harry inside the house and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Rolls, but my friend can't stay long. We really must go now." So Harry and the man went inside and left Mr. Rolls outside in the garden. The man immediately closed the curtains and then he sat down at the table. He divided Lady Vandeleur's diamonds into two unequal piles. He gave the smaller one to Harry. "Now leave and don't ever come here again," he said angrily. Harry did not know what to do, but he knew he could not fight this man. The man then pushed him into the street, and he fell to the ground. The diamonds in his pocket were now all over the road. As he lay there, a man in dark clothes appeared and quickly picked up most of the diamonds and ran off. Now, what could he say to Lady Vandeleur? When Harry got back to the Vandeleur house, he found Sir Thomas, Lady Vandeleur, and Charlie Pendragon waiting for him. Obviously, Sir Thomas now knew everything about his wife's plans to sell the diamonds. Harry gave Sir Thomas the few diamonds he still had, but Sir Thomas was so angry, both with his wife and Harry, that he didn't believe the story of the man in the garden. Finally, when he was a bit calmer, he said, "And now, Mr. Hartley, I'm going to take you straight to the police station. You can tell them everything." Harry knew he had no choice but to go with Sir Thomas. When they got there, Harry told his story to an inspector. The inspector listened carefully, and after Harry stopped talking, said, "I'll take you back to that man's house again. If what you say is true, we must find this man and get the diamonds back immediately." But while Harry and the inspector were walking back to the man's house, Mr. Rolls was still in the garden, thinking. After meeting his landlord's friend, Mr. Rolls was certain that it was Sir Thomas Vandeleur's private secretary, Harry Hartley. This made him curious about why Harry was there. He could not believe that Harry really was a friend of his dishonest landlord, Mr. Rayburn. So Mr. Rolls decided to look around the garden. He noticed some damaged roses near the garden wall and was curious to find out why. This was very strange because Mr. Rayburn loved his roses. Near them he saw a piece of material and recognized it as the same material as that of Harry's trousers. Now he knew how Harry got into the garden and how the roses were damaged. Well, well, this is becoming quite interesting, thought Mr. Rolls. Just then, he noticed something buried under the roses. He quickly dug it out with his foot It was a leather jewelry box. Clearly, his landlord and Harry did not know about it. Mr. Rolls turned the box in his hands. He then opened it and was amazed to see what was inside. On a piece of soft green velvet was the largest diamond Mr. Rolls ever saw. He knew very little about diamonds, but he knew at once that this was very probably the most precious diamond in the world. Chapter 3. The Prince and the Diamond Hunter. The more Mr. Rolls looked at the Raja's diamond, the more he was attracted to it. It was as large as a duck's egg. Mr. Rolls next did something very unusual for his character. He quickly looked around the garden to see if anyone was there. When he saw that no one was there, he quickly put the box with the diamond inside his pocket. Then he quietly left the garden and took it back to his room. Now Mr. Rolls was a thief. Mr. Rolls still needed to talk to his landlord, so he returned to the garden. A few minutes later, the police inspector arrived with Harry Hartley. Terrified, Mr. Rayburn immediately gave back all the diamonds he had. As for Mr. Rolls, he told the police what he knew and added, "I suppose your investigation is finished now." "Oh no, we're still missing some other jewels. There's a magnificent tiara and also the most valuable piece, the Raja's diamond," answered the inspector. "I suppose you'll find it soon. It must be very difficult to sell such a famous diamond," replied Mr. Rolls nervously. "Not really. The thief can cut the diamond into smaller pieces. Then he can sell them separately," said the inspector. After everyone left, Mr. Rolls returned to his room. He was happy that now he knew how to sell the diamond. There was only one problem. He did not know how to cut diamonds. He looked in all his books, which had no useful advice at all. But then he remembered an old friend in Edinburgh. Of course. Why didn't I think of it before? My friend's a jeweler. He can teach me how to cut diamonds, thought Mr. Rolls. He decided he could not wait, so he decided to take the night train to Edinburgh the next day. The following afternoon, he left his bags at the railway station because his train was not leaving until the evening. He had time to have dinner at his club first. He met a friend of his when he arrived at the club. "You're lucky to be here tonight. Prince Florizel of Bohemia and John Vandeleur are having dinner here," said his friend. "I know Sir Thomas Vandeleur, but I have never met his brother," Mr. Rolls replied. "Well, John Vandeleur is a great adventurer. He travels around the world looking for diamonds. He knows all about them," said his friend. When he heard this, Mr. Rolls suddenly became very interested in the two men. "You must try to listen to their conversation. I'm sure it's going to be very interesting," added his friend. "But how will I know who they are?" asked Mr. Rolls. "Oh, you can't miss them. Prince Florizel is the finest gentleman in Europe. John Vandeleur is about 70, with long white hair and a scar across his face," answered his friend. Mr. Rolls hurried to the dining room. It was not difficult to find the prince and John Vandeleur. The two of them sat at a table together and were talking intently. There was no one at the table nearest to theirs. "Good. This is my big chance," thought Mr. Rolls as he sat down at the table. He tried to listen to what the two men were saying. "Did you hear that someone stole the Raja's diamond from my brother Thomas?" asked John Vandeleur. "Yes, I heard all about it. I think that diamond should be at the bottom of the sea, replied Prince Florizel. It's dangerous. It makes people behave in strange ways. As a diamond hunter and a Vandeleur, I can't agree with you, said John Vandeleur. He seemed to be a bit angry. You may not agree with me, but a diamond worth so much money can have great power. It can make people do very strange things, said Prince Florizel. That's right. I'll do anything to find the Raja's diamond. I'm sure I will one day because I'm the best diamond hunter in the world, cried John Vandeleur fiercely. When he heard these words, Mr. Rolls suddenly felt very frightened. Oh, what if he finds out I have the Raja's diamond, thought Mr. Rolls. Then he looked at his watch. I must leave now or I'll miss my train, he thought. A short time later, Mr. Rolls got on his train. He felt happy when the conductor said, You're lucky. Tonight there is only one other gentleman sharing your carriage. But Mr. Rolls was not happy for very long. He took a seat in his compartment. A man smoking a cigar was standing in the corridor. As the man turned around, Mr. Rolls's heart jumped. He had a scar across his face. Mr. Rolls was filled with fear. The other gentleman was John Vandeleur. Partners in crime. Mr. Rolls was terrified because John Vandeleur was in the same carriage. He became even more afraid after he saw how the carriage was divided. There were 3 compartments in the carriage. Each compartment was separated by only a sliding door. There were no locks on the doors, so John Vandeleur could easily get into Mr. Rolls's compartment. I'm sure he's going to find out I have the Raja's diamond, thought Mr. Rolls. Mr. Rolls put the diamond in the inside pocket of his jacket and then put on his coat. He was determined not to go to sleep and sat listening for any noise coming from John Vandeleur's compartment. A few hours passed. The train was almost halfway to Edinburgh when Mr. Rolls started to feel sleepy. He tried to fight sleep, but it was very difficult. His last thought before finally closing his eyes was of his terrifying neighbor. After some time, Mr. Rolls opened his eyes. Everything was dark, except for a small light. The train was traveling very fast. Now fully awake, Mr. Rolls suddenly sat up. He was very afraid because he had a bad dream. He felt under his clothes to make sure the diamond was still there. It was. Now Mr. Rolls felt a little better, but he could not fall asleep again. His hat was pulled over his eyes. He stared at the sliding door. Everything was quiet, except for the noise of the train. Suddenly, he noticed the door moving a little, then a little more. Finally, it moved enough for him to see John Vandeleur's head. He felt that John Vandeleur was looking at him. He kept very still. After some time, John Vandeleur moved his head back. Then he closed the door. Mr. Rolls did not know why, but he thought John Vandeleur was afraid of him. Maybe he just came to see if I'm asleep, thought Mr. Rolls. This made him feel brave enough to go and open the door himself. He got up and slowly made his way to the sliding door separating his and John Vandeleur's compartment. When he got there, he opened the door just enough to see what John Vandeleur was doing. He was shocked by what he saw. John Vandeleur had a knife in his hand. He's using it to cut the sleeve of his coat, but why? Thought Mr. Rolls. he soon saw the reason. There were diamonds in the sleeve of his coat, and John Vandeleur was taking them out and letting them drop into a hatbox on the floor. After the diamonds, John Vandeleur took from the sleeve a magnificent tiara, Lady Vandeleur's tiara. It was exactly as the police inspector described it. So John Vandeleur is a diamond thief too, thought Mr. Rolls. This made him feel brave. Without thinking, he opened the door completely and said, "I take a great interest in diamonds. I see you do as well. I have something here that might interest you." John Vandeleur was very surprised and angry. Mr. Rolls quietly took the diamond box out. He opened it and showed Mr. Vandeleur the Rajah's diamond. John Vandeleur could do nothing but stare at it in shock. "I see we have diamonds from the same collection," said Mr. Rolls. "I don't understand." "Aren't you a priest?" asked John Vandeleur. "I'm a student of theology, but don't judge me so quickly. I'll tell you how I found the diamond. You'll understand why I did what I did," answered Mr. Rolls. Then he told John Vandeleur about his visit to his landlord's garden and how he met Harry Hartley. Mr. Rolls ended his story with these words.